Good day, everyone. So, for today, we have our special episode of our podcast. As you can see, I have beautiful ladies here with me, Miss Michelica Rondero, Miss Kath Ruiz, and Miss Elaine Cebuc, and I am Christian M. Aguila. So, for today's special episode of our podcast, it is a sort of book review of the famous novel Frankenstein by Mary Shelley. So, let's begin. In life, we could really think of something that could make us a better person. Things that may seem odd to other people, but if they were on our place, maybe they could understand. However, these things may be too much for us to dream about. And we are just thinking that we can make it, although the truth is, it will never be possible. These statements are some of the ideas that formed in my mind after reading the novel Frankenstein by Mary Shelley. The novel revolves around the character of Mr. Victor Frankenstein, who's madly into creating someone out of what he called raw materials. The novel is also a representation of living your ambitions and sooner realizing the consequences of those ambitions to you and to the people around you. But the question is, how far will your dedication, ambition, madness, obsession, and dream will take you?
So for now, let us take a look on how the novel was created by Mary Shelley. So for those who don't know, the novel is part of a friendly competition to know who could write the best horror stories. So the people involved in the said competition includes Mary Shelley's husband, which is Percy Shelley, the romantic poet, which is Lord Byron, and Byron's doctor, John Polidori. So out of all the novels included in that competition, Mary Shelley's Frankenstein is the most famous one. So it includes elements of horror, gothic genres, and different kinds of creatures.
So, did you know that the original version of the novel Frankenstein was written in the year 1816, and 2 years later it was released? In the year 1831, when Mary Shelley was 34 years old, a new version was released. This is the time that the said competition mentioned by Missy Book started. Then, a fully revised version was released. For trivia, her personal experiences as a mother and actual experiments also serves as her inspiration.
In addition, Mary Shelley wrote Frankenstein when she was 18 years old, and it was became most popular Gothic literature. In 1816, she gave birth to her son, William, named after her father, and having daughter named Clara, and they both died at a young age. Percy Florence was their only surviving son.
Looking at how the words are written in the novel, I observe that there are lots of figurative languages and symbolisms used, specifically the presence of simile and metaphor. In the first parts of the novel, Mary Shelley used a lot of these figurative languages. So let us observe these following lines when the narrator is describing the character of Elizabeth. So the first line we have here, he came like a protecting spirit, wherein the author used simile in comparing his father to a spirit that is very protective for his niece, Elizabeth. Another line is, she was docile and good-tempered. In this line, the author used metaphor to describe how docile and good-tempered Elizabeth was. Moreover, the author used simile and metaphor in the lines, gay and playful as a summer insect, her imagination was luxuriant, yet her capability of application was great, and her person was the image of her mind.
We both have the same observation. I have examples too on how the writer used simile, metaphor, and symbolism. These following lines will prove the artistry of Mary Shelley. Here are the lines that I observed wherein simile is present. Although as lovely as bird, like a magic scene, on the other hand, here are the followings where I observed Mary Shelley used metaphor. A boy of singular talent and fancy, her figure was light and airy. She appeared the most fragile creature in the world. These following lines show how Mary Shelley is fond of comparison. The way she compared the characters to some instances made the novel more understandable by the reader.
In terms of symbolisms, I found the death of Mrs. Caroline Beaufort represents Elizabeth's character development. After the death of Mrs. Beaufort, Elizabeth took over her position in the family. She made everything for her cousins and uncle, and that made her a strong and dependable character in the novel.
So let me just add for the symbolism present in the novel. So as I was reading the novel, I realized that the biggest symbolism was presented or represented by the creature created by Victor Frankenstein itself. So I noticed that after Victor created the creature, it started to represent the societal expectations and how people consider the physical appearance of someone in judging them, and how they consider their expectation and their acceptable physical features that they consider as they treat someone. So moving on, let us now give more focus on the characters of Victor Frankenstein and Elizabeth. So Victor Frankenstein is the main character in the novel. So the story revolves around his commitment to knowledge, his understanding of the natural life, and his journey to discovery. So Victor was portrayed as a complex character because of his conflicting traits. So we can see him as a good man in some of his actions. So Victor's initial action was driven by his desire to conquer death, to know more about life, and to alleviate human sufferings. However, his thirst towards discovery led him to doing horrifying acts. He even robbed graves seeking for body parts just to pursue his obsession. And he also disregarded or abandoned his responsibility towards the life he created or the creature, and he even get disgusted and feared of it, knowing that he should be the one who take possession of it and guided it to integrate into society. And his fear and disgust towards the creature fueled the violence of the monstrous creature.
So, based on my understanding about the novel, Victor is a very ambitious man. He wanted to achieve the things that he desired. His dream of creating someone out of the materials he once had really proved how ambitious man he was. Aside from that, he was also obsessed about his goals. It seems like he didn't want any distractions about it. And from the beginning, his willingness to learn more about life and how can he be able to outcast death really proved how thirsty he was from knowledges that human being wanted to know more about. The good thing that I observed about Victor Frankenstein is that he was very dedicated. He never stopped doing things that he really wanted until it is completely done.
So, Victor Frankenstein eventually unearths the secret of life and applies this understanding to the creation of a living entity. Sadly, despite the creature's peaceful and caring nature, Victor's prejudice makes him find the creature's physical appearance repulsive. Consequently, the creature exacts retribution on Victor, and Victor vows vengeance on the monster, starting a vicious circle of guilt, wrath, and devastation. As a result of Victor abandoning the creature, in the end, without realizing it, Victor resembled the beast he despises a great deal.
So, on the other hand, Elizabeth embodied a character of an ideal woman. So, her character suggests the good and normal life that Victor could ever have if only he refused to follow his obsession. And also, Elizabeth suggests the reason urging Victor to abandon his obsession and get back to the life with Elizabeth, full of love and normalcy. So, aside from those good characteristics of Elizabeth, she was also seen as a one-dimensional character, where he was largely defined based on the relation of her relationship with Victor. And also, Elizabeth was one of the important characters in the novel, which suffered just because of the unfavorable acts of Victor that led him to have more regrets and guilt towards his actions.
So when it comes to Elizabeth, I observed how understanding she was. She made everything smooth for Victor, from taking up the role as a replacement of Mrs. Caroline Beaufort because of the character's unfortunate death, This showed how strong and dependent character Elizabeth was. She also played an important role in the novel because without her, the essence of Victor having his realization about his impulsive actions and being obsessed about what he wanted to do will never be possible. So another character who was the most important role in the novel is of course the creature created by Victor Frankenstein. The creation of the creature really made the novel more interesting and engaging. Despite having the unattractive look of the creature, my thoughts always said that the creature had the most colorful character out of all. Although hated by the person who created him, the creature doesn't only have the most interesting personality but also added color to the whole novel. At first, he was created out of the raw materials from dead bodies of people. Then, upon having life, he was hated first by the person who created him, which is Victor Frankenstein. He tried to escape from others and avoided exposing himself from other people. He then lived alone, and with all the hardships he had experienced, he then blamed the man who created him. And his anger made him to think to take revenge against Victor. And I really understand him in that sense because it is not his fault living with the looks he had, and it is not also his fault, and it is not his will to be created. And but then, although everything was not about his will, he was the one who is suffering. And in that sense, I really understand where his anger is coming from. So having said everything from Mrs. Rondero and Mrs. Cebuc's understanding of the characters up to my views of on how the characters really made the whole novel, I think it is safe for us to say that each character has an important role in the novel, and also they all have each issues being faced individually.
You are right. And speaking of issues, what do you think are societal issues that are depicted in the novel? Let me be the first one who give my insights. I observed that the novel explored various social issues including ethical implications of scientific experimentation and creation, the consequences of excessive ambition, and the isolation experienced by individuals who are different or rejected by the society. The themes of prejudice, discrimination, and the responsibilities that come with the power and knowledge. And it's about how it's not fair to treat someone badly just because they look different.
So, after reading the novel, I have noted some of the social issues present in it. So, it includes class and social mobility, scientific process and responsibility, the concept of nature versus nurture, and the prejudice in appearance. So, Victor was from a wealthy background, and that fact is the main reason why he has the full opportunity and power to pursue his education and, of course, his scientific ambition. However, the creature received the exact opposite of his. So, considering the creature's background and appearance, of course, so he received nothing but rejections and societal exclusions. And the novel also explores the danger of science once someone exceed the ethical boundaries. It also includes the concept of nature versus nurture as portrayed by the creature. So the creature was once or inherently good, but after all the rejections he received, him living the life that he didn't choose and having no one by his side, so he became evil and monstrous.
So as for me, the most evident societal issue I found in the novel is a way similar to your answers, which is the society's judgment of people based on physical appearance. I think the creature created by Victor Frankenstein experienced struggles and obstacles living freely, not because he was created out of his will, but because the society doesn't approve the type of appearance he had. Let's say, if the creature created with the looks of the normal people The people will never treat him negatively. But since he was created looking differently with others, he was judged instantly as monstrous and demonic and will hurt everyone, which is not the case. This also reflects a broader issue of discrimination. The creature was discriminated and never given the chance to prove himself, whether he will be good or bad based on his deeds and action and not based on his looks. So the novel also depicted the idea of having a relationship with a relative, which is not acceptable in the society. Victor and Elizabeth are cousins, and from the very start, Caroline Beauport made them think that it is okay for them to be together. Considering the time when it is written, it could be possible for them to be together. But looking into the society, I think them being together will never be accepted by everyone.
Now, let us move on to our most favorite part in the novel. Kat, you go first.
So my favorite part in the novel is when Victor Frankenstein confronts his creations or the monster or the creature on the glacier. During this encounter, Victor realized the full extent of his responsibility as a creator and the consequences of abandoning his creation. This moment prompts a realization about ethical obligations inherent in scientific pursuit and the impact of unchecked ambition.
So as for me, my favorite part in the novel is when Victor showed his complete dedication, his great motivation to achieve or to pursue his scientific ambition. So let's now disregard the result of his action. So I wanted to be like Victor in a way that he really do things just to make things happen. He really fight the hurdles or the hindrances that comes his way. And for me, I wanted to apply that realization in a way that if I were to dream of something, I will really take an action and not only wait for it to happen.
So, as for me, my favorite part of the novel is since everything began here, I think my favorite section of the story is the opening. Young and driven, Victor Frankenstein is a medical student who gets obsessed with discovering the meaning of life. He spends months alone, experimenting and thinking, motivated by his studies and curiosity. He gets the notion to build a living thing at this point, a creature that would eventually be known as the monster.
I think if I were to choose a favorite part, I would choose the I would choose when the creator made by Victor Frankenstein is starting to think as a human being, when the creature figured out how to speak and communicate and understand and manage to use his own will. This part became my favorite because it is the part for me wherein the exciting moment began, especially that in that part where the idea of taking his revenge started. It is an intriguing part in a way that the thinking process began and to function, and it made everything in the novel really interesting.
Well, we all have our favorite parts in the novel, and all those parts made the whole novel engaging to the reading public. But I have this very interesting question to each and every one of us here. So, do you think Victor Frankenstein is a real hero in the novel?
In the novel, I think some people may think Victor is a hero because he's smart and ambitious, but he also does the thing that caused a lot of problems, like making the creature or the monster, leaving it alone. Maybe it depends on the reader. What do you think, Christian?
Well, as for me, I think Victor is the protagonist or the main character in the story, but not the hero. Because of some of the actions that he did that are not likely look like to be a hero. For me, the hero role, I will give it to Elizabeth. Because without her, Victor will never realize the consequences of her actions and his obsession in creating something that out of this world, I guess.
As for me, I can say that Victor Frankenstein is a real tragic hero, a character who brings about his own doom through his own actions. This ultimately leads him to destroy his own life by creating a monster he cannot control or understand. that ultimately kills everyone in his life, including his wife Elizabeth. Victor can be described as obsessed, driven, intelligent, remorseful, ambivalent, tortured, and isolated. He is obsessed with the idea of creating life, which displays his driven character. His ability to create the monsters underscores his intelligence.
So readers might think that Victor is a hero and some may not. But as for me, I think Victor is not a hero. It is because living my life, I can see a hero as something selfless, something that or someone that thinks more of the people around them. But opposite to Victor's characteristic, I think Victor is just a mere the main character in the novel, but not a hero.
It really depends on the reading public whether Victor is a hero or not. But then, wrapping up everything, what are the takeaways that you got after reading the novel Frankenstein by Mary Shelley?
So after reading the novel Frankenstein by Mary Shelley, so I have noted my greatest or my takeaway from the novel. So in my case, the greatest takeaway that I got from the novel is to consider responsibility and consequences of one's action. In Victor's character, I realized that one's decision is one's possession. Once we did something, small or big, we should always take responsibility of it and face the consequences if there is any. It is for us to always think of these two things before we end up creating a mistake and regretting it after.
So, for me, the greatest takeaway I have from the novel is that I came to the realization that none of us are monsters. All of us are. After reading the Frankenstein, though some have claimed that Frankenstein is the true monster in the tale, none of them struck me as being entirely monstrous. Despite being motivated to commit horrific actions, Frankenstein and his creation were both essentially good and compassionate individuals. The monsters reacted to rejection and estrangement. Frankenstein was motivated by cowardice at first, then by mindless ambition. He committed a grave error, was unable to accept it, and attempted to flee and hide. Though it was obviously the wrong thing to do, the response seemed incredibly human.
So in terms of takeaways, for me, this novel shows up that trying to do big things without thinking about consequences can be really risky. It shows us being too focused on our goals can make us forget about the people around us and the consequences of our actions.
Well, as for me, the greatest takeaway from the novel Frankenstein is that too much obsession may lead to something we can never imagine. We should be careful and mindful about the things we are obsessed about because that obsession can bring you to something you are not expecting. Additionally, knowledge is really powerful. Be wise of using it. We may not know to where our knowledge could bring us. Lastly, never ever treat other people different just because they look differently from us. People are uniquely created, so be compassionate and kind.
So that is all for today's special episode. I hope and we hope that we encourage you to read the famous novel Frankenstein by Mary Shelley because it is a very interesting novel.
And we also hope that you continue to improve your tenacity and eagerness to learn and to read. Again, this is ours, Aguila,
Rondero
Ruiz.
and Cebu. See you on our next episode.
Thank you!
I know